Welcome, everyone. It is so nice to have you with us today. I know we've got some parents joining us, we have some educators joining us, and we are really eager to jump right in. We've got a question on the first slide that hopefully you see, asking you how math is going in your home. We want to know what brought you here today. You've been at this now for some weeks now, maybe some years in certain circumstances. How is math going in your home? Layla is telling us it's not bad. We're happy to hear that. As you're signing in, go ahead. I'll start to tell you where you can chat all of this. So you are in a Blue Jeans app or website or something. And on your screen, you should see a chat function. So you should feel free to go ahead and type into that chat your answers or your questions. You'll also find on that right-hand side a question and answer button. If you have questions that you are really eager to have answered that are the reason that you came here today, please go ahead and put those in the question and answer box. Either place is fine. We'll look at both of those and we will make sure that we answer as many of your questions as possible. Today is about you. We want to know why you're here. We want to know how we can help. And so the more that you type in, the better we'll be able to do. Hagar, yes, COVID. That is definitely, a lot of people should have learned a lot of things last year, and they didn't. We're struggling with that in my household as well. I have 3 kids, and I should introduce myself. I am Stacy Gershkovich. I am the managing director of sharing here at the Robertson Center. I say here very generally, because I'm not there right now, but we are Success Academy Sharing Wing, who are hoping to bring educators and parents together and other people who are involved in education to make this all a little bit easier. And I can think no time better than right now that we all need this to be a little bit easier than it is right now. I can tell you from personal experience, it struggles. From professional experience, it's difficult, but we're going to get through this. So we've got the chat, we've got the Q&A. We are going to start in a second, but I want to make sure you know we have a Q&A set aside for the end. So if you have specific questions that you want answered, go ahead and put them in there, and we will save some time at the end to get to your specific questions. So without further ado, you can see I'm not alone here. I'm happy not to be alone here. I brought with us one of our favorite mathematicians from Successive Academies. Kara, can you introduce yourself?
Of course. Hi, everyone. I'm Kara. As Stacy said, I work on the math team here. I'm on the Education Institute. I'm the program manager for elementary school math. So here to help with anything you need today, obviously in a similar vein, but I was also previously a middle school teacher. So coming with that perspective as well. I'm so happy to be here and hopefully you find this session helpful.
Great. Well, I'm so excited to have Kara here. Kara and I are going to do some role playing. Kara's going to be a student while I am the parent. And hopefully we'll all learn something because I know I've struggled in the spring with my then first grader, now second grader. I've got a kindergartner here as well as a 3-year-old. So excited for this. So I'm hearing some things in the chat. Raquel is saying that math is not going so well. I think that's true for a lot of folks, and that's why we're here today. Yadith has some questions about math stories specifically, which is a part of Success Academy's math program, and a lot of schools do math stories, so we can talk about that specifically. In fact, we're going to do some of them together. So let's, without further ado, jump right into what we have for you. So I want to first start by making sure we're really clear that the goal here is not to become experts in mathematics. Your students take a year to learn second grade math, and it would take you maybe a little bit less, but you don't have that much time to learn second grade math, and nor is that your role. That role is left to the educators, and we're going to do that. But your role is to really be confident and excited about helping, and we want to make sure that you walk away feeling that. And we want your child also to feel really confident in their ability to do their math work at home or in school or wherever they were, a combination of both. So that's what we're going to hopefully accomplish in our 45 minutes today. I came across this on the internet. You've probably seen similar things like this. we are going to change this. This should not be, this pains me as a math lover myself. I am sad that this is the reality, and I certainly have been there myself, so I totally get that. But after today, we're going to change this. So the good old days, right? I see this all the time. Why can't we go back to the good old days? And then I have to remind people that the majority of people, when I go into a room of educators, into a room of people, into a room of anyone, and I ask them if they like math, most people don't, right? And so while we look at this longing as the good old days, we also recognize that the good old days really weren't so great because most people don't love mathematics. And we are really hoping to change that. The goal of math, teaching and learning, is that kids love math and that they want to do mathematics for the rest of their life. So how are we going to get there? Let's think a little bit about this dichotomy that I think exists on what parents believe they're supposed to do while they're at home, whether it be for homework or whether it be now in our remote learning reality, and what teachers actually want to see. And so you see it right there. The goal here is not for kids to always get the right answers. It's not to have perfection. And I think often as parents, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves as well as our children to do that. And in reality, what teachers want to see is just really hard work and thinking. And really, that's what we want for our kids, right? If our kids work hard and spend a lot of time thinking, they're going to excel in life, in school, etc. And so that's what we're going for. And this slide seems very overwhelming, but I think it's important for us to stop and recognize that so often we think about mathematics instruction as a way for kids to learn how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. And while certainly those things are very important and our kids are going to learn all of those things, it's much more than that. We want our students to think mathematically. I want my own children to not just have to memorize certain procedures and back to that slide, all those things we learned where you flip, keep, change, flip. We don't want to memorize. We want kids to really understand mathematics and to be able to think like mathematicians. And so I brought out like two of my favorite ones here. The first one I think is the most important right here, that our goal here is to get kids to be better at not giving up. Right? And I'm sure you, similar to me, am feeling this right now. When my kids are struggling, I don't know what to do. And frankly, my child's pretty bad at struggling right now, and gets very frustrated and gives up pretty easily. And one of the goals of math instruction, besides learning to add, multiply, subtract, divide, etc., is also to get kids to be better at persevering, which is going to help them in life in every single way, shape, or form. So we want to keep that in mind when we think about the goals of math instruction. It's not just the simplicity that I think we were so focused on when we were in school. So with that said, I know you came here for practical tips, so I will get off my soapbox a little bit. And instead, I want to focus on what can you do as parents to really help make sure that you are supporting your kids in their learning how to divide, multiply, subtract, and add, but also in their ability to persevere in problem solving and to make good arguments, and all of those things that you saw in that prior slide. And so I want to thank one of my favorite math educators, Steve Leinwand, who came to us many years ago and gave us these 6 questions, along with a lot of other great advice. But these are the 6 questions that our teachers use in our schools and that our parents, we want you to use when you're helping your child with math homework. And in just a couple of seconds, Kara and I are going to demonstrate what that sounds like with actual math problems from the homework, from the schoolwork that we're sending home. These questions are really open-ended and they're to get kids talking. And so our goal here is to use these questions to get kids talking. And we're going to go ahead and do that right now. And I've got my questions. Even though I've been doing this for a lot of years, I need the questions in front of me. And I would encourage you also before I forget, we are going to be A, sending out a recording of this, and B, sending out some helpful tips in a nice, neat package for you. So don't feel like you needed to copy down all those questions right now. You will be getting those after this session in an email, nicely packaged for you. So with that said, we're going to practice. And the goal of this practicing is not about you learning every math strategy your first grader, your kindergartner, or your second grader may use this year. It's not about you being able to solve the problem the way that the school is teaching you to solve, your children to solve the problem. But it's really about getting your child to think more deeply about the problems and to be able to share their thinking with you, which will help you better understand whether or not your child truly understands what they're doing. So with that said, Kara, are you ready? Okay.
Yes, I am.
So this is what we're going to do. You guys are at home. You probably have a calculator somewhere on your phone or your computer that you could use. You have a pen and pencil available. You have your mind available. Take a moment, read this question, and think about how you're going to solve. If you want to go ahead and solve it, you can, and I'm totally fine if you use a calculator or any other tools that you have at your hand. Okay, so we know the problem. I've read 72 books. I need to read 300 to win the contest. How many more books do I need to read? This is definitely one of those number stories that one of our participants, and I'm sorry I'm blanking on your name, I'm going to try to find it, Yadith, had asked about earlier. This is what it looks like. Kara, you are my child now. My daughter's name is Emma. I've got a Riley, I've got a Jake at home, but today you're going to be my child. You're going to have, you're going to share with me your work, and I'm going to use my 6 questions to see if I can understand what in the world you are doing, because it looks very different than the way that I would solve the problem. First of all, let me show you the way I would have solved the problem. This is not what my daughter did. This is what I would have done. This is probably what many of you at home would have done, but this is not the way you're probably going to see our students solve this problem, right? Your child's probably not going to approach it in this way, although they might. So let's see what our kids are probably going to do. Kara, I see you got the answer to be 228 books because I know you circle the answer, but can you convince me that that's the answer?
I started with 72 and I needed to get to 300, and so I added and got 228.
Why did you add? Like what? Yeah, why?
I added because I started at 72 and then I knew I needed to get to 300 books to win the contest. So I need to figure out how many more books I need to get to 300. So I had to add 100, 120, and 8 to get from 72 to 300.
Great. I think I understand exactly what you did. Okay, so remember, it's not about me doing the strategy that Kara's doing, but in my ability to get Kara to talk about it, I pretty much understood what those little jumps that she does. That's called a number line. I'm sure you've heard of it before, and the kids are using it to represent their strategy. So let's do another one. Okay, there's 3 number sentences going on. I see, Kara, you got the same answer, but you solved it in a different way. Can you explain to me, just explain that, please?
This time my answer's in the middle. It's not on the top.
Prove it.
So in order to get my answer again, I thought about how many I needed to add to get to 300. That's why I'm ending at 300 again. But this time I just got 72 plus 200 to get to 272. Then I had 272. That wasn't quite 300. So I added another 20 to get to 292. And then I knew I needed 8 more to get to 300.
Yeah,
so my
that
answer
makes total sense.
all the things that I added to it.
Yeah, I see exactly what you did there, and it was helpful that you circled that middle. Okay, that was our first one. We're going to do another one. And I see some questions coming in. Keep those questions coming in as we go. Whatever is on your mind, put it in there. We're going to have time at the end once we've kind of gone through a couple of examples for you to see what this could sound like. And again, even though I've been teaching mathematics for many, many years by now, I still have these questions ahead of me because it's a good reminder, right? So I always keep them in front of me. Okay, we've got another question here. Miss Jessica makes bags of candy. I'm not going to read it to you. You guys can read. Take a moment, look at this problem, think about how you would solve. If you want to go ahead and solve it, go ahead. Again, feel free to use any tools that you have at your fingertips to solve it, including a calculator or any other. Okay, so I will read the problem now. Miss Jessica is making bags of candy. She's got 144 Skittles, 107 Hershey Kisses, and if she puts 10 candies in each bag, we want to know how many bags of candy she can make. Okay, Kara. There is a lot of writing here. I'm not even sure what your answer is. So can you convince me that this is the way to solve the problem?
My answer is 25 tens because I added and then I tried to figure out how many tens fit into that number.
Okay, so convince me.
Well, I had to add because 144 Skittles and 107 Hershey Kisses, if I put those two numbers together, that gives me the total number of candies.
I see what you did there. Okay, so I see that there's 251 total number of candies, but I don't see where the 25 tens come from. Can you explain that, please?
Yeah, so then I knew that 251, when I split it up into place values, I have two hundreds, and I know that 100 is 10 tens. And so since I'm trying to figure out how many groups of tens, I knew that that 100 was 10 tens, that other 100 was 10 tens, that 50 was 5 tens, and then that one, I couldn't make a group of 10 with just one, so I just left it out. And so my 10, 10, and 5 gives me 25 tens.
Yeah, I can see exactly what you did there. Thanks for sharing. Okay, we're going to go to another one, but I see Becky put this about in the chat. Again, my job is not to teach Kara, right? That's the teacher's job. My job at home is to really get an understanding of what Kara's doing. And as Kara's sharing, it's forcing her to really think more about her strategy. You'll notice that a lot of times when we do this, our kids notice their own mistakes. A lot of times when we do this, our kids recognize a different way they could have solved it. So really getting our kids to talk about mathematics is one of the ways that they are learning mathematics. So we've got another one here. It's about toy cars. Again, just like before, take a moment, read it, think about how you would solve or think about how your child might solve, and then we'll talk about it in a sec. Okay, so Justin's collecting these toy cars. He's got 4 groups of 8 green cars and 4 groups of 2 yellow cars. And we want to know how many cars Justin has. So Kara, that number line again, I never use this number line, so I see it. I know you explained it to me before, but how do you know? Convince me that this solves your problem.
Well, I did 32 plus 8, and that got me 40. So my answer was 40.
So I didn't see the number 32 or 8 in the story. So I can see that your answer is 40, but can you explain to me how you got to the 32 and the 8? Can you prove that?
Yeah, so in the problem, it says that he has four group. He has, let me go back to the problem. He has four groups of 8 green cars. So then I did on the number line, those 4 8s up top were my 4 groups of 8 green cars. So that's where the 32 came from. And then the 4 groups of 2 yellow cars, I did the same thing on the bottom. I knew that I needed 4 groups of 2, and that got me to 8.
Oh, now I see exactly where that 32 and 8 came from. Yeah, I'm convinced. Thanks for sharing. Oh, you solved it a different way. And I saw someone who had a question. We'll talk about this more in the Q&A, but for kids who really do stick to one strategy, and that's fine, right? If that strategy is working for that child, it's fine for them to stick with it. But one of the things we do in school is say, can you solve that in a different way? And that's particularly powerful once the child's already solved it and feels confident in the answer. They're more willing to take risks and try new things. So, Kara, I see that you tried to solve this a different way. I see lots of little lines. I don't know what these little lines mean. Can you explain this to me?
Yeah, well, like, because I do think there was also a question, this is me stepping out of the scholar perspective, there was also a question of like, what do you do if your kids don't know where to start? So this is one of the strategies that's helpful is like drawing a picture for it, and that question prompts them for that. So that's kind of where I was going with this. But now back into this student perspective is, well, there were 4 groups of 8 cars. So then I did circles with 8, 8, 8, and 8. And then I knew that there were also 4 groups with 2 in each. So I did 2, 2, 2, and 2. And then I realized that there are 4 groups of 8 and 4 groups of 2. So I can combine those groups and make them 4 groups of 10. And then I knew that 4 groups of 10 was 40.
Yeah, I see exactly what you did there. Can we, to that point, Kara, can you do me a favor and pretend that you don't know the answer and you don't know where to start? Because that's a common problem, right? The kids read the problem, they understand what the problem says, but they don't know what to do, right? And they're staring at a blank paper. You see that they only have a couple minutes left, and you as the parent are not really sure what to do. Our temptation is to tell them the first step, right? And we really want to encourage parents not to do that because, again, the goal here is to really motivate our scholars and encourage our scholars to really think on their own. So I came to check in on Kara. I had a few minutes between some meetings, and I noticed that she's got a blank paper in front of us. The countdown timer is going. Kara, what's going on?
I read the question, and I don't know what to do.
Okay. Can you draw a picture?
Yeah. So I have, I think, Justin collects toy cars. He has 4 groups of 8 green cars. Okay, so I can do 4 groups and put 8 green cars in each.
Yeah.
I still don't know what to do.
I'll stop there. We'll stop there. But that's a really great way to get kids started. Or if you've got those Unifix cubes at home or you're using any other counters that you have at home, asking your kids, what if you pretended that this was a toy car, right? And getting kids to say, oh, well then let me make one group of 8 and another group of 8, right? So that's one strategy. Okay. We just did a couple examples. We're going to get to all your questions now, but I just want to make sure that we go back to the real focus of here, right? It's not about learning the math, right? It's about really making sure that math is a time that is enjoyable for us and is enjoyable for our kids, because the way that kids get better at math is by loving mathematics. And we really want to foster that love, particularly, I mean, always, but particularly when the kids are in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. And so we really want us to remember that we've got to approach it every day. And I know this is hard, positively, and really focus on effort. So if your child yesterday left the page blank and today was able to draw those cars, even if they weren't able to get the answer, that's a big step forward. And you can see that took a lot of effort from your child. And so we want to emphasize that effort. Use these 6 questions. Again, we'll send them to you so you have them. Making sure that you are also giving feedback and asking for help. Talk to your teacher. I know as parents, we're not always sure, particularly in this new world, what teachers want to hear from us. And I'll have Kara talk about it in a little bit. But teachers want to hear from you, right? Now more than ever, you know about what's happening with your child. And the more that you can share, hey, my child didn't know where to start today, that's going to be really helpful for the teacher so that they can follow up on that the next day. Often, whatever your child's struggling with is a struggle for many kids. So I would encourage you to really ask for help and give feedback to your teachers. So with that said, I'm going to take this down. Okay. And now it's just the 2 of us, and we've got some time to talk about the questions. It's 2 of us and all of you. So go ahead if you've got questions that kind of you came with, or you've got new questions that sprung up as we've been speaking. Let's get started. So I think we answered this question, but anything else, Kara, that you would advise a parent for a child who's hesitant to start?
Yeah, I think the idea about them getting to like visualize, like the part about the picture is just getting your scholar, your kid to like see what's happening, the movements in the story. So anything you can do to get them to visualize it, they can act it out, they can model it on cubes, they can draw a picture. That's always a great place to start. But so too is like prompting them to go back and read the question again, and also thinking about like it's sometimes with kids, it's like, I don't know what to do, but there are things that you do know. So what do you know and where can you start? And just framing it more positively sometimes helps shift kind of the mindset.
Right. So we do a lot of acting out in our classroom. And so if the problem was about toy cars, like get your kids to say, okay, like let's pick up that group of toy cars. Did you have that first group in your hand? Okay, put that first group down, pick up another group, right? Getting kids to act it out is a really powerful tool. So, okay, Susan's got a great question where she finds herself assisting a lot. What advice would you give to a parent who, I mean, the child's appealing for help. It's not like the parent's kind of going in and inserting herself. Child saying, help me, help me. What do you do?
I do think that, because I saw the question on like the spirals are challenging. So it's coming back to old content, and that's what like a spiral is, or the teachers are talking about spirals. But I think it's also important to note like what content the kid is getting stuck on. And like to Stacy's point before, like if it's always the same thing, like reaching out to the teacher for like potentially extra resources, or just so they know where or like what your scholar is missing so that they can actually help. I also think like it's harder because you are the person who's also helping with classwork too and homework, but just to that plug for like communicating with the teacher, they don't have that direct line to your kid that they used to have. So I think those open lines of communication so they know where they're actually struggling is really important. But again, like whatever you can do and the vaguer the questions to get kids to do the thinking and get themselves unstuck, the better, because it is just a habit. And so I'd say go back to those 6 questions we posted and just keep trying and get them to kind of ask themselves those same questions.
Right. And I think that's really good advice. It goes back to this idea of we want our kids to always show their best effort. And sometimes it takes our support in getting them to show their best effort. But we don't want our support to be giving them the answer if they don't actually know it themselves, right? And it's a fine line. And so if you're sticking with the 6 questions and you can get your kid to show their best effort and they get the right answer, that's great. That should be a signal for you that your child needs to really work on that confidence that they really actually know the mathematics, and you want to encourage them to do that thinking on their own. So slowly you'll be able to ask less questions. On the opposite end, if you really are asking these open-ended questions and your child is not able to answer the question, you don't want to complete the challenge, the spiral, perfectly and submit it to the teacher, because that's going to indicate to the teacher that your child knows that already. And so you really want to make sure if your child doesn't know it, the spiral is a good opportunity to say, hey, this is something I don't know and I need more support with, so that the teacher can make sure that they include that in upcoming assessments, in upcoming teaching. So again, fine line, but I really would encourage you to focus on the effort. And if your child, after lots of attempts, is not able to get the mathematics, that's a good time to talk to the teacher and just let them know, hey, my child is really struggling with time. If you could review that sometime soon, that would be helpful. Okay, kindergarten and remote learning. Patricia, I hear you. I've got a kindergartner myself, so I am with you on that. Can you, Kara, talk to us a little bit about what we should be expecting from kindergartners right now, and anything we could do to support them right now?
Yeah, I think kindergarten is a different beast in remote settings, especially because at SA, if your scholar is an SA scholar, we don't expect them to really we don't fully expect them to put pencil to paper until December. It's more about getting them to talk about what they're doing and start to enjoy math and start to build that number sense. So yes, the process of writing down their work, especially with a stylus, is really challenging, which is why we don't want to push that too soon. But instead, just try to get them excited about the stories and see math in a lot of the real world applications. And wherever you can push them to count or group things, that's what we're going for here, for them to kind of see math as a real world application and see math beyond just numbers, but as a process of thinking. So I would say that's your biggest bang for your buck with kindergarten, is just getting them to talk about it and having conversations about what they're doing is kind of all we expect at this point. And we know it's going to be a challenge, but they shouldn't be rushed to do anything that they're not ready to do. And
so a couple of tips that we had at our last parent webinar, where we were speaking about kindergarten and first grade. One of our participants said that the teacher encouraged the kids to bring a stuffed animal to class so that they could share their answers with the stuffed animal, knowing that a parent's not always available to be there for the conversation. So I thought that was a great tip. I did that for my daughter, who loves to talk. And so she's got a little stuffed elephant next to her named Sloan, and Sloan is who she shares her answers with and talks to. So you might want to try that at home. But again, to reinforce what Kara is saying, getting your kindergartner just talking about the mathematics and saying what they're doing. And if you want to capture what they're saying, that's totally fine. I encourage you to do that. Okay. Oh, this is a good one, Yolanda. This is my second grader. My child never completes the work in the time that they're given. Right? We see these students all the time. I've got one in my own house. What advice do we have for parents whose kids are not completing the work? And let's assume that the child is starting the work when they're supposed to start, but they're not completing the work.
I think this, again, goes back to thinking about kind of where they're getting stuck, and figuring out the types of questions that you can ask them to get them unstuck. Because if the teacher is giving unreasonable time issues, then it's probably a concern for everyone. And so I would just communicate with the teacher and let them know, hey, this is happening. Do you have any tips? Maybe the teacher can add time. We don't know that. But what I can say is if your scholar is not finishing, they might have an inefficient strategy, in which case maybe talk to them about, not give them a new strategy, but what are you doing here? Why is that helpful? Can you think about it a different way? Questions like that. But I think it's also important to kind of talk to them about why they're not finishing in time? Are they getting stuck and not able to understand the whole question? So they're sitting there staring at it. I think digging into that a little bit more and asking them a few questions to uncover it. Any other tips from you, Stacy, as a parent?
Yeah. So again, this is my second grader. This is Jake. Part of his problem is that he's slow to get started, and he will make sure to arrange his pencils and do other things. And so one of the things I've been working with him is really as soon as the teacher kind of gives him the go ahead to start working, really getting right to work and making sure that everything is organized ahead of time. There's no distractions for him. This is still an ongoing challenge. And then really making sure that we focus on small goals and progress. And so yesterday, for instance, or I'm thinking about this morning actually, he was doing his math homework, the math work, and they were on like a online IXL thing, and he did whatever it was, I can't remember, it was 12 problems. And so what I said to him is, okay, and I knew he was supposed to do more, so I said, okay, so tomorrow let's see if we can get 15 problems, right? So trying to set small goals for them. Certain kids have a harder time staying focused. And so if you can see that your child can be focused really well in their work for 5 minutes, see if tomorrow they can focus for 6 minutes, right? Then let them stand up, stretch, and then get back into it. But again, I think Kara's advice also to reach out to the teacher if you're noticing this all the time, certainly important to do so. Okay. Okay, Susan is saying that sometimes the way her son adds, is wonky. He makes it complicated. He uses an extra step. And so she's wondering, what do I do? Do I give him a way to think, like, do I tell him what I would do? Or do I let him do it his way despite the fact that it is inefficient and it's taking him a long time?
I would say, I think, Stacy, you kind of spoke to this a little bit earlier, is the idea that, well, some of what we're going for with this like new way of teaching math is to like understand the relationships and not jump to kind of formal algorithms too soon without kids really understanding what they're doing or why they're doing it. But I think any kind of idea generating questions that get your kid to figure out like, why did you do that step? What did that tell you? Is important. But I do think if it's always the same way and it's inefficient, the scholar has probably learned a different strategy too, and they're just more comfortable with that one. I wouldn't necessarily like guide them towards one specific strategy, but potentially ask, like, is there another way you know how to solve this problem? Because you tend to stick to what you're most familiar with and what you're comfortable with and what you know will work. But sometimes as you start to build that habit with other strategies, you start to get that familiarity and comfort with some other more efficient strategies. So while we don't want to like force one strategy over another, always asking for multiple strategies is great, and having a conversation about how they're similar and different could help kind of guide your scholar down a different path or to a better strategy.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Yeah. Good. Okay, we're back to the stylus. The stylus was a big hot topic in our K-1 webinar last week. So I think I can share a couple of thoughts here. So one participant, and I'm sorry, I don't know who this was, is saying that they are starting to write the numbers and letters backwards since that's how they see it in their tablet. That shouldn't be the case. My son uses the stylus and is not seeing the numbers and letters backwards, so I would reach out to your school. Sorry, that was Yada. Thank you, Yadi. If you could reach out to the school, it shouldn't be the case that it's backwards. So if it is, that's the teacher's probably not aware of that, and I would certainly ask them about that because that certainly would be confusing for anyone, particularly a kindergarten first or second grader. But the other kind of concern I know is one I've had myself is that the stylus in general just takes longer for the kids to use. They're not less comfortable with it, and as a result, they're not finishing. And my advice there is just, I don't think I've said this yet today, but I will say it, trust the process, right? Like The stylus is new. It's new for everyone. It's going to take time to adjust. Some kids will adjust to it more quickly than other kids. But I would encourage you to just keep your kid practicing with it. One of the things that my kid loves to draw with it and do pictures. They can use like every color under the sun on it. It makes them really happy. So letting them use it after school for joy, just to get used to using that stylus, I find is really helpful, and I would encourage you to do that. But it should be the case that your child is getting better at it. If for whatever reason your child is still struggling, I've heard that they sell like a thicker one. You can ask the school if that's something that you think that your child needs, or you can ask the school if there's a way for them to use pencil and paper for some of the day as they get used to it. But again, I would just give it a little bit more time. I really do think the kids will get used to them. And thank you, Susan, for sharing some mirror image technical advice. I think we all could use any advice we can get. Okay, so Connie is asking any books that you'd recommend for parents who are homeschooling to make sure that they're teaching in the same way that teachers are. So this is particular to a parent who's homeschooling their kid for the year, it seems like, but I think this applies for any parent who's looking for extra resources. Anything out there that you think is great that you'd recommend?
I would kind of have to look back at a lot of the resources, but we use a lot of the CGI materials. We can potentially add that to the package that we send out. But another one that I find really helpful, and I don't know if these are free or posted online, but we use a lot of the CFL books in our math curriculum, which is the Context for Learning books. And I know that the creator of that has created a lot of guides for parents too in this remote context to help guide them down like how to navigate these like complex stories to get kids to pull math out of real life examples. So that's something to look into too, that I've sent to a few parents, because to your point, it is a little new for us. And if you're not expected to learn second grade, how it can kind of be explained to you in a way that makes sense, we can definitely look into that a little bit more, but I don't have any resources other than those on the top of my head.
Yeah, and from my experience, I would say there's a lot of resources out there that are pretty good, but a lot of it can be made better or made worse by the questioning that you use along with it. So my recommendation is, if you have a resource that you're using, to really focus on those 6 questions and to get your kids to do the thinking work. A lot of the programs that I've seen take a lot of that thinking away from the children and take them step by step through a procedure. Even if they're trying to do it in one of the new ways, like the number line, they'll introduce it, but they introduce it in a step-by-step way. My recommendation is to look at a resource that you like, that you're familiar with. Try not to take out a million resources, but focus on giving your kids the opportunity to solve problems, think about them, with the 6 questions and without the kind of broken down step by step as much as possible. There's a lot of great stuff out there, so would recommend. I'm sure you can find it if you Google, and yeah, we put in the chat the one that we were speaking about that we use in our schools. Okay, well, with that, our 45 minutes came to a very quick end. I want to thank every one of you for coming. I know you've got kids at home, you are busy, and you've got a lot on your mind, and I know that given that you are here focused on how you can better support your child, you are probably already doing a great job. So keep it going, keep it fun. Again, K-2 math, more important than anything else, is to facilitate that love of learning. If you want to stay for the 3-5 session, if you signed up for that, we're going to see you back in a couple of minutes. If you are not and you only have a kindergarten, first or second grader, thanks for coming, and we wish you lots of love and math happiness.